So I've been watching a lot of Lepic build guides on YouTube lately, and after doing so, I've come to the conclusion that absolutely nobody, and I mean nobody, has any idea how the fuck to build this guy. Now what would make this video any different than any other bumblefuck that you've seen with a 20-minute build guide for no reason? The difference is, we already know the math on how his damage is calculated, but what a lot of you don't know is how his shot count is calculated. And I took the time to write out this aptly named function that not only tells us the shot count accurately, but also the end total damage averaged against your crit rate. And because of this, I have worked out and optimized a Lepic build for you that will not only do more damage than all the other builds you've ever used, but it will also be more tanky, meaning that you get to be less of a failure in front of your friends whenever you do Gluttony. Moving on to what we're using though, and now any prior Remnant viewers, unlike other build guides, I'm actually going to talk about why we're using it as we talk about what we're using, instead of talking about what we're using first. But our augment is Firearm Master. This does piss. Really? It adds like 20k damage on a crit, if even, and that lasts for about 9.4 seconds with this setup. Don't get me wrong, any damage increase is a good increase, but don't ever be afraid to just take this off. It's not a huge deal. If you'd much rather have the passive that lets you live, go ahead and just do it. I don't give a shit what you use in your sub-attack module, but as for the next 4 mods, Lepic is a finely tuned crit quadruped, and if you aren't using the holy quaternity of crit mods, then you are fucking trolling yourself. Make sure you slot these in, or you suck. Next up we have Fire Specialists, which all of you are used to seeing, and then Spear of Shield, which none of you have seen before. A lot of you are used to seeing something like Maximize Power or a Tech Specialist, but the problem with those is they modify the power modifier, not the power itself. And the power modifier is this gigantic fucking 2,760%. And since power modifier is additive to that number, it really doesn't do anything for us. It is more beneficial to have an 8% boost to the base skill power ratio, which is the same bucket that the Slayer bonus goes in, than it is to build for a tech or skill power modifier. Anyone who tells you to build into skill power modifier via tech or skill, doesn't matter which, has no clue how the fuck to build Lepic, and they are literally forcing you to take a damage loss for an extra wasted forma. Next up on damage is Dangerous Ambush. This isn't a huge surprise, everyone already knows that this thing is ridiculously fucking strong, but as for duration, we are using both Maximize Duration and Skill Extension. Maximize Duration a lot of people have shied away from because it has a negative skill power modifier bonus, but as we just discussed in regards to why Spear and Shield is used over Tech Specialist or Maximize Power, the skill power modifier on something this large as an additive negative is fucking harmless. It does nothing. And even if we have this negative, it's cancelled out down to negative 1.1% because we get a 20% skill power modifier increase whenever we use our 2, which is obviously going to be lasting the entire duration of our ultimate. Not only that, but it allows us to have more duration when both of these are used together, making our ultimate last even longer. Right now, we get 18 shots. We can technically swap out increased HP for Battle of Stamina and get 19 shots instead, but I personally prefer to live instead of shoot one more time. And once again, to circle back on the skill power modifier shenanigans, Firearm Master is skill power modifier, and as we just discussed a third fucking time, it does nothing. It does piss for damage addition. Use it because it is something to use, not because you have to. Again, do not hesitate to take this off if survivability is in question. And if survivability isn't in question, then keep that on there and put on Battle of Stamina instead of increased HP, and you'll edge out that 19th shot instead of 18. As for your components, it must be the Slayer set. This adds into your base skill power ratio, and that is an insane bonus. It's the same bucket as Dangerous Ambush, and that is a huge, huge benefit to have. Nothing even comes close to beating this in terms of your end total damage. Your Ox needs to have MP recovery out of combat as high as you can get it. Secondary stat is kind of irrelevant. HP is probably the best that you can get. Your sensor is the most important part of this by far. You need both MP recovery in combat and max MP on there. Max MP is the priority, but you still want to get both gold if you can. Your memory, the only role that matters is MP recovery modifier. That just helps with both your MP recovery in and out of combat from the others. And then your processor is irrelevant. Use whatever you'd like. Now at this point, some of you are probably going to point out that on my Descendant, I didn't build for skill cost or max MP, and that Slayer increases the cost of your skills, which in theory will lead to a lesser shot count. That is not true. As long as you have max MP on your sensor, as high as I do, you don't need to build for skill cost or for max MP. The sensor is your max MP, and we can make up for whatever MP we lack with the MP recovery in and out of combat. Now some people are probably going to be confused by that one, but I'd like you to tell me, in what reality is there a scenario in which Lepic finds himself using his ult on a boss where he isn't able to stay out of fire for at least half the skill cast, because there isn't one. Not Gluttony, not Molten Fortress, there's none. Every single boss that exists in this game at this point can be ulted while staying out of fire for at least half of your skill. And because of that, no skill cost or MP efficiency, none of that shit is needed. You are going to be able to shoot all 18 shots without issue. Unless you're fucking dumb, and maybe you're taking a bath in the lava for whatever reason. At which point you're not going to get 18 shots, you're going to get a bare minimum of 13. But that is only if you are really, really dumb about it. And 13 is this really weird number that a lot of people pride themselves on being able to reach with all these build guides I've watched lately. But 13 is the dumbest number that you could brag about. 13 is the barest minimum you should ever be able to shoot on Lepic's ult. And if you aren't shooting higher than that, then your build sucks. Moving on to the reactor though, this is actually pretty flexible. You obviously want your optimization condition to be a weapon with green ammo, although that's really not as big of a deal as you think it is so long as you can slot sharp precision shot. So that just means it needs to be white, orange, or green ammo, but green is obviously the best for the shortest windup time, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But your sub rolls need to be additional skill attack when attacking a Colossus, for obvious reasons. We've all heard that story on why it's so good. And then the next one is flex. It can be skill duration, which is my preferred slot. I prefer skill duration simply because it allows me to go with increasing HP instead of battle of stamina, meaning I get to be more tanky. But you can go with crit rate or crit damage. However, the ideal roll is not crit rate or crit damage, and I know a lot of people have been humping crit damage for a while now, but the highest damage potential period is a tech skill power boost ratio, and that is because the tech skill power boost ratio bucket is left at 0.2 due to the skill power boost ratio of the reactor, but it never gets boosted. Fire skill power boost ratio gets boosted by Fire Specialist, and the base skill power boost ratio gets boosted by Slayer and Spear and Shield, along with Dangerous Ambush later in the fight. But tech skill gets left alone the entire time. Now, it doesn't beat crit rate and crit damage by much, but it does win overall. So if you want the highest damage potential period, don't go with crit damage or crit rate. Go with tech boost power ratio. However, in general, just for tankiness sake, I would say go with skill duration. Skill duration will also let you go with a 19th shot if you are super angsty for that kind of shit, if you do switch to Battle of Stamina for less health. All in all, though, they would be equally competitive with very slight differences. But if all the end results are roughly the same, wouldn't you rather just be more tanky? I know I would. Moving on to the weapon though, I happened to get Wave of Light as my reactor weapon, which is green ammo, which is nice. The reason it is nice is because Sharp Precision Shot has the delay at max for each stack at 0.4 seconds instead of 0.5, and if you have a white or orange mod that is Sharp Precision Shot, the delay is every 0.5 seconds, meaning that the full windup is 5 seconds instead of 4. In some cases that can matter quite a lot, in most cases it doesn't matter at all. If you get an orange weapon as your roll and you're tired of farming for reactors, because that's kind of fucking ass in this game without being able to reroll, just keep it. It's not a huge deal. And then fire rate up is obviously next. I personally have better weapon weight on here for faster swap speed. That's just personal preference. It doesn't actually matter for the ultimate. And then lastly, I know some people are probably going to go out there and tell you that you can edge out a 20th shot if you switch to something like the Annihilation set. But I just want to clarify that if you use Annihilation on Lepic, you are kinda dumb. Even if you did edge out the 20th shot at the cost of Slayer, I could have 75% of your shots. No, I could have 60% of your shots and add Slayer in, and I would still do as much damage as you, getting 20 shots instead. Annihilation is never worth it. Slayer is literally the only set you should ever use on Lepic. Do not let anyone ever bait you into swapping off. It is mandatory. And the result is absolutely fucking disgusting. This calculator that I've been using, by the way, I need to pretty it up because right now it's using a format from the Remnant section of my site with the Remnant build calculator and shit like that. So if you want to dab on your friend's build and show them how they're missing 20 million damage because they followed the wrong YouTuber's guide, you can do that.